watching today. Today we're going to talk about one of Jesus' miracles when he calmed a storm. We're going to start out with the Bible verse, and this comes from the book of Psalms. And Psalms is in the middle of the Bible, and it's a very old book of the Bible, but it still speaks to us today. And it's Psalms 119, verse 18. Open my eyes so I can examine the wonders of your instruction. And what that's getting at is that if we ask God to help us understand what's in the Bible, what's going on at church, then he'll help us, but we need to ask him. So I wonder, is there any time, anything that helps you whenever you're afraid? We're all afraid of something. Some people more than one thing. So what do you do? Is there someone in your family or a friend you can talk to? Somewhere you can go? So when I'm afraid, it helps if I talk to someone in my family or a friend, and then I feel better. Our Bible story is about being afraid. And it's in Mark 4, verses 35 to 41. It's called Jesus Calms the Storm. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." They were at the Sea of Galilee in a boat. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up. That means a big storm. And waves broke over the boat, so it was nearly swamped. The boat was sinking. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." So our faith word today is guide. We ask God and Jesus to guide us, to teach us, to help us through everything. So I wonder, what would you have done if there was a storm came up and you were there and Jesus was sleeping in the front of the boat? What would you have done? And what do you imagine the disciples did after the storm was over and they got to shore? What do you think they did? So here's our wonder box. And then it is the Bible. We need to read the Bible, hopefully every day even. The Bible teaches us about God and Jesus. There's more than one version of today's story in the Bible. The other one is found in the book of Luke. So we're going to read that one too. And then we'll talk just a little bit about what happens when you have more than one version of a story in the Bible. So we're going to look for Luke 8. Luke is the next book in the Bible. I'm looking for chapter 8. And the heading is often what the story's about. And it's Jesus calms the storm. So this is from Luke. It's a little bit different. And this is verses 22 through 25. One day, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side of the lake." So they got into a boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake. That means a storm. So the boat was being swamped, and they were in great danger. The boat could have sank. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided, and all was calm. "Where is your faith?" he asked his disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him." Okay, so that was a little bit different than what was in Mark. A big reason is they were written by two different people. They were both Jesus' disciples, but I don't know about you, but if I'm with a friend and we went and did something and we come back home and we're telling people about it, and they may tell a different story a little bit from what I would say. So you can think of that for the Bible, that two different people writing about the same thing, because they were both there. They would put a few details that would be a little different, but the big idea is still the same. They were in a boat on the Sea of Galilee. A storm came up. They could have drowned, and they woke up Jesus, and he calmed the storm. And they went ahead to the shore and got out of the boat. So we'll talk a little bit about similarities and the differences. So in the one we just read, Jesus and his disciples got in a boat to cross the sea. In the book of Mark, Mark said a crowd was there. Well, in Luke, there's no mention of a crowd, but we don't know. So there's some things in the Bible we just have to wonder about. We don't know. And also in Mark, it said other boats were with them. Other boats sailing on the sea. But in the book of Luke, there's no mention of other boats or other people. So don't let that bother you. It's just that whoever wrote that part of the Bible, they were there. They knew what happened. But they may see things a little bit differently because they're different people. So, and the book of Luke adds a little bit more than the book of Mark. They said, they told Jesus, "We're perishing, we're dying." And Jesus asked, "Where is your faith?" In other words, don't you think God will protect you? And the disciples said, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" So remember that when you're reading the Bible, that two different people could have written it and seen things a little bit differently, but they're still telling what happened. So that's the important part. The story from the Bible today was about when Jesus calms the storm. When God helps us during a difficult time in our lives, that difficulty is often called a storm. And I know that some of you have already lived through the storm in your life. It may be something that happened to you, or a relative, or a friend, but it's a storm, something really difficult. In my family, my husband and I both had to change jobs several times, and that caused a storm because it was a difficulty to change jobs and do something different, be somewhere different with different people. So just think that God can help us and pray about it. It's always important to pray because God will help, but we need to ask. So this story is about one of the miracles in the Bible. I know you can see the orange on these pages. It's listed in small print, the miracles of Jesus. So we're not, of course, going to read all of them, but they cover different things. The big thing is Jesus had the power to perform miracles as the Son of God, and Jesus had the love. Jesus loves us. So he performed different kinds of miracles. He performed miracles over nature, like the story from the Bible we just read. He calmed the sea and the storm. Power over sickness. Jesus healed people of their sickness. Back then, where he was living, didn't have a hospital, probably not a doctor, or you couldn't afford it. If there was a medicine, you probably couldn't afford it. But a lot of people got sick and they stayed sick. So that was important. And Jesus responded to people, and he sometimes asked them if they believed that he could make them well. And they were like, yes, because Jesus had already healed many people of their illnesses. Okay, so why isn't everyone made well? That's a good question, but sometimes even his disciples or people close to him had a problem, a health problem, and Jesus didn't heal them. So Timothy was one of them. He had stomach trouble and he was often sick. Paul had a serious illness. When he prayed, God told Paul he wasn't going to make him well. So Paul wasn't discouraged because Paul knew God would give him the strength he needed in spite of his illness. And I think that's a lot of what a lot of us do. There's no healing, there's no cure for a lot of diseases still. So God's going to help us through that. And if you ever end up with the illness, pray to God to help you, and he will. Then the Bible has power over evil spirits. Jesus casted evil spirits out of some people. And then power over death. There were a few people that Jesus raised from the dead. So Lazarus was one of them. The little girl who had just died, he raised her from the dead. So he has power over death. And in this book, in the orange, look at all these miracles. And it's in tiny print, so you know there was a bunch. And there's some we don't even know about that weren't recorded in the Bible. When you think about how many people Jesus healed, because Jesus traveled from town to town, people who were sick would hear he was coming and they would crowd around and want to be healed. And the Bible doesn't even have all of their names or how many people Jesus healed that day. So the first section over nature, like today, he calmed the storm. Power over sickness, that's the longest list. And then power over evil spirits, and power over death. So Jesus could perform miracles because he was the Son of God, and he loves us, and he wanted to help people. The Faith Word is guide, and guide means showing the way, like the light of Christ. So the Bible guides us. People in our family can guide us, our friends can guide us, and they show the way. If you have the paper today, one side has a skit, and there's only a couple people in it, so see if you can't find somebody to help you give it. And you can be the narrator or Jesus, and then there's a few other parts, because it's fun to do these. And then on the other side, if you like crossword puzzles, there's one there. So, have a good week and remember that God and Jesus love you.